The cold sterile lights of the Vanguard Enterprises boardroom on the 52nd floor overlooking the endless energy of Manhattan bore down on me like an accusation I could no longer escape. Lila Harrington stood tall at the head of the long mahogany table, her tailored black suit hugging her frame, her dark hair pulled back in a professional chignon, the pen poised over the stack of legal documents that would seal her control over the Harrington family empire now that she had fulfilled the one condition her father had set, marrying a man to prove her stability and commitment to the family legacy. The room was filled with the people who had shaped her life and limited it: her father Victor, the stern patriarch; her mother Elaine, the quiet enforcer of social norms; her husband Marcus, the handsome but distant figure by her side; and the board members who viewed her with a mix of skepticism and resentment. Then Lila looked up, her eyes scanning the room until they locked on mine in the back, and she spoke the words that changed everything. "I cannot sign these papers without the truth coming out. The Real co-founder and the mind behind the Nexus division that turned this company around is not just me. It is Brittany Ellis." The silence that followed was deafening before it shattered into chaos. Victor rose from his seat, his face a mask of fury. "What is this madness, Lila, on today of all days when we finally hand you the reins after all the sacrifices? You bring this up now?" Marcus turned to her, his voice low but sharp. "We had an understanding, Lila. Your past was supposed to stay buried." Whispers spread like wildfire among the board, some muttering about scandal and how the markets would react, others with looks of disgust that made my skin crawl, as if our love was something filthy rather than the most real thing either of us had ever known. I sat frozen in my chair, the invitation from Lila burning a hole in my pocket, the one that had read, "Simply come to the signing. I need you there." After years of building walls to protect myself from the memory of her, I was here watching her blow up the life she had chosen over us. My thoughts flooded with the past as the arguments raged on. It started innocently enough at Stanford University in a packed lecture hall where innovation and ambition filled the air. Lila was the golden girl everyone wanted to know, the one with the last name that opened doors. I was the quiet coder who saw patterns in data no one else did. Our partnership began with a group project but quickly became something deeper. Late nights in the library turned into stolen moments in her car, where we talked about everything from code to the weight of expectations. She confessed how her family would never accept her true self, how being the only daughter meant carrying the future of the empire on her shoulders. I shared my own struggles growing up in a small town where difference was not celebrated. When she kissed me for the first time, it felt like finding home in a world that had always made me feel like an outsider. We moved to New York after graduation, full of dreams. In a cramped Brooklyn apartment, we worked tirelessly on what would become the Nexus division, a cutting-edge AI platform for predictive analytics that could revolutionize how Vanguard did business. Lila was the face pitching it to her skeptical father as her vision, while I poured my expertise into the algorithms, the ones that made it truly innovative. At night we were just Brittany and Lila, two women in love, cooking dinner, watching movies, and planning a future where we wouldn't have to hide. Those were the happiest days, the ones where her laugh could erase the stress of secrecy. But the cracks started to show as her family demanded more involvement. They praised her for the success but pressured her to settle down to find a suitable husband to secure the line of succession. I saw the toll it took on her, the late-night calls where she would hang up and cry in my arms, saying she didn't know how much longer she could keep pretending. The room snapped back into focus as Victor demanded answers. "Explain yourself, Lila, right now, or so help me." Lila turned her eyes, finding mine across the sea of suits and hostility. "Brittany built the foundational algorithms and the intellectual property. Without her, there is no Nexus division, no exponential growth, no reason for this transfer to even happen the way it is structured. I am giving her the recognition and the shares she deserves." Marcus stood up, his chair scraping loudly. "This is insane, Lila. We had an agreement. You said your past was behind you." The board erupted in arguments, some calling for lawyers, others whispering about scandal and how this would tank the stock price. I felt the familiar knot in my stomach, the one that formed the day Lila told me she had to end us. 3 years ago in that same Brooklyn apartment, she had cried as she explained the ultimatum from her father. The will required her to marry and show stability to inherit, or the entire empire would go to her cousin, a man who would run it into the ground with his reckless ways. She chose duty over us, or so it seemed. I begged her to find another way, but she said the family would never accept us, that society would tear us apart, and that she couldn't bear to see me dragged through the mud. So she married Marcus, a family friend from similar circles, in a lavish ceremony I watched from afar through leaked photos online. The pain was like nothing I had ever known, a betrayal wrapped in necessity. Now here she was tearing it all open again. As security was called to calm the situation, I stood up, my legs shaky, but my voice strong when I finally spoke. Why now, Lila, after everything, after you left me to play the perfect wife, why drag me into this circus? Her eyes filled with tears she couldn't hide. Because I can't live the lie anymore, Brittany. Not when the cost is losing myself completely. The room spun with accusations of fraud, immorality, and family disgrace. In that moment I realized this wasn't just about shares or companies. It was about the price we both had paid for secrets, and the question of whether truth could ever repair what prejudice and pressure had broken. But to understand the full weight of that moment, I had to go back even further, to the days when our love seemed invincible, and the world was ours to conquer. The security guards ushered some of the more vocal board members out, but the air remained charged with tension. Lila made her way through the crowd toward me, her expression a mix of determination and vulnerability. But to fully grasp why her words hit me so hard, I had to remember the days when our world was smaller, but infinitely brighter. It was during our second year at Stanford that our connection deepened beyond the classroom. We spent countless hours in the computer lab refining the early version of what would become Nexus. Lila had the vision for how it could transform her family business, but I had the technical skills to make it happen. Our conversations turned personal as we shared secrets under the glow of computer screens. She told me about the constant pressure from her father to date the right kind of man to uphold the family image. I opened up about my own experiences with discrimination in my hometown. One night after a particularly long session, she took my hand and said, "I feel like I can be myself with you, Brittany." That was the beginning of our secret relationship. We kept it hidden for good reason. Her family was deeply conservative, and any deviation from their expected path was seen as a threat to their status. We would meet in quiet cafes far from campus or take weekend trips to the coast where we could walk hand in hand without fear. Those moments were pure happiness, the kind that made the hiding worth it. We dreamed of a future where we could be open about our love and our work. The breakthrough came when we tested the AI on a real problem for a small client. The results were astounding, and Lila convinced her father to invest in it as her project. The success brought us closer, but also the first signs of trouble. Her brother noticed how much time she spent with me and made snide comments about our close friendship. Lila brushed it off, but I could see the fear in her eyes. The pressure mounted as graduation neared. Lila started missing our evenings for family dinners where her father paraded potential suitors. She would return exhausted and distant. I tried to support her, reminding her that our work together was building something that could change everything. But deep down I felt the shift. One evening after a particularly tense call with her father, she came to me in tears. "They want me to attend a charity gala with the son of a business partner. It is just for appearances," she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. I held her that night, knowing the cracks were widening. Our love was strong, but the world outside was stronger in its demands. The final blow came 6 months after we launched the full Nexus platform in New York. Lila had been promoted within the family company, and the success was credited entirely to her. I did not mind at the time because she promised me it was temporary. Then one afternoon she arrived at our apartment with a ring on her finger. "Brittany, I have no choice. The family will disinherit me if I do not marry Marcus. The will is ironclad." I pleaded with her to find another way to challenge the terms, to choose us. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You do not know what they are capable of. They would ruin your career. Make sure no one in the industry touches you. I cannot watch that happen to you." The argument lasted hours with accusations and heartbreak until she packed a bag and left saying, "I love you, but this is the only way to protect what we built." The door closed, and with it the future I had imagined. Back in the side room of the boardroom, Lila closed the door behind us and the noise outside faded. She reached for my hands, but I stepped back. "Is this your redemption, Lila? Or are you just trying to ease your guilt before the family cuts you off?" She sank into a chair, her shoulders slumped. "Every day since I left I have regretted it. Marcus is kind, but there is no spark, no understanding of who I really am. I built the empire on our dream, but without you it feels empty." I listened as she poured out the details of her married life, the lonely nights, the forced smiles at events, the way her mother reminded her daily that this was the price of legacy. My own pain resurfaced, the nights I spent alone rebuilding my life in a small tech firm where I hid my past to avoid questions. The prejudice I faced when rumors surfaced about why I left Vanguard, the sideways looks from colleagues who suspected the truth. We sat there for what felt like hours talking through the choices we made, the ones forced upon us and the ones we accepted. Outside, Victor was already on the phone with lawyers plotting to invalidate the transfer. Marcus had stormed off threatening divorce. The social fallout was coming, the headlines, the whispers in elite circles about the Harrington heiress and her secret life. In that moment I saw the cost Lila was willing to pay, the family ties, the financial security, the public image. But was it enough to mend what was broken? I left the room with my mind reeling, knowing the real battle was just starting, and the decisions ahead would demand even more from both of us. The days after the boardroom exploded into a media frenzy that I watched from the safety of my small apartment in Brooklyn. Headlines screamed about the Harrington family scandal, the unexpected revelation of a hidden co-founder, and the whispers of a past relationship that challenged everything the dynasty stood for. Lila called me repeatedly, but I let the messages go to voicemail. I needed time to process the whirlwind of emotions, the anger, the lingering love, the fear of what accepting her offer would mean for my quiet life. In the 3 years since the breakup, I had rebuilt myself piece by piece, taking freelance coding jobs, then landing a stable position at a startup that valued my skills without asking too many questions. The work was fulfilling, but the nights were lonely, filled with memories of Lila and the what-ifs that kept me awake. I remembered the months after she left. I threw myself into refining the Nexus code, even though the rights were now tied to Vanguard. I sent anonymous updates to her, knowing she would use them to grow the division. But each success story in the news with her face attached felt like a knife twist. Friends tried to set me up with other women, but I could not bring myself to open up again. The prejudice I encountered when I did date a woman from my building, who later distanced herself after learning about my past connection to the Harringtons, reminded me why we had hidden in the first place. Society was not ready, and the elite world Lila came from was even less so. I questioned my own choices every day, wondering if I should have fought harder or walked away sooner. Lila finally showed up at my door one evening, her eyes red from lack of sleep. The family has frozen my access to certain accounts and Marcus has filed for separation. She said it matter-of-factly, as if reporting on a business deal. But her voice cracked when she added, "I do not care about the money, Brittany. I care about fixing what I broke." We sat on my couch, the same one where we had shared so many quiet evenings, and she told me about the internal family meetings, the accusations from her mother about bringing shame on the name, and the way her father threatened to rewrite the will entirely. I listened and felt a mix of sympathy and resentment. She had chosen the empire over me, and now the empire was rejecting her for telling the truth. As we talked, I realized my own internal battle. Accepting the co-founder credit and the shares would thrust me into the spotlight I had avoided. It meant facing the same prejudice on a national scale, the interviews, the social media storms, the loss of my anonymity. But refusing meant letting Lila carry the burden alone, and denying the work I had poured my soul into. The moral dilemma weighed on me: was truth worth the destruction it caused, or was silence the kinder path, even if it perpetuated the lies? Lila left that night with a promise to give me space, but the invitation to a follow-up meeting with the board hung in the air. I spent the night pacing, weighing the price of standing beside her versus walking away forever. The social pressure mounted as old friends reached out, some supportive, some judgmental. One former classmate from Stanford texted that the news made her question her own choices, and how society still punished women for loving women. It opened my eyes to the broader impact our story could have. Yet the family pressure on Lila was relentless. She texted me updates about Victor disowning her publicly and Elaine begging her to retract the statement for the sake of the grandchildren they hoped she would have with Marcus. The drama was tearing her apart, and I could not ignore that I still cared deeply. The decision to attend the next meeting was not easy, but it felt like the next step in facing the past we both had to confront. The follow-up meeting was scheduled for the next week in a smaller conference room at Vanguard. I arrived early, my nerves on edge as I waited for Lila. She entered looking exhausted but resolved, her usual poise cracked by the events of the past days. The board had been briefed and the lawyers were present with stacks of documents outlining the share transfer to me as co-founder. Victor was absent, sending a representative instead, a clear sign of the rift. Marcus had not come either, choosing to handle things through attorneys. The tension was palpable as Lila explained her decision again, emphasizing that the intellectual property and the core innovations were mine. As the lawyers reviewed the papers, I flashed back to the moral crossroads we had faced years earlier. During our time in Brooklyn, Lila had once suggested we go public after a major client win. I had hesitated, knowing her family would react badly. We argued, then made up with promises to find a better way. Those choices haunted me now. Had my caution contributed to her feeling trapped? In the room, the discussion turned heated when a board member questioned the legitimacy of the patents. Lila defended me fiercely, citing records and emails that proved my contributions. Her defense stirred something in me, the reminder of the woman I had fallen for, the one who fought for what was right even when it cost her everything. After the meeting, we walked along the Hudson River path, the city skyline a backdrop to our conversation. Lila opened up about the awakening she had experienced in her marriage, the realization that duty without love was empty. She described the nights she sat alone in the grand house thinking of me and the life we could have had. I shared my own journey, the therapy sessions where I learned to value my worth beyond the relationship, the small victories in my career that rebuilt my confidence. The social prejudice we both faced in different ways bonded us in that moment, the shared understanding of how the world viewed us. Yet the internal conflict raged. Accepting the role meant stepping into a public battle with her family, the potential for lawsuits and the exposure of our past. Lila admitted she was prepared to lose it all for the truth, but asked if I was ready to join her. My decision hung in the balance, the trade-off between a peaceful life and the chance to claim what was mine while possibly reigniting our connection. We parted with a hug that lingered, the first physical contact in years, and it brought back the warmth I had missed. The price was becoming clear, but so was the possibility of healing. The final signing took place 2 days later in the same boardroom where it all started. This time the room was quieter, but the stakes were higher. Lila and I sat side by side as the documents were presented. Victor had shown up after all, his face stern but his eyes showing the pain of a father losing control. Elaine sat beside him, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. The lawyers explained the terms. The shares would be split, with me receiving a significant portion, and Lila retaining leadership, but under new scrutiny. As I signed my name, the weight of the moment hit me, the years of hidden work, the betrayal, the awakening, all culminating in this act. Immediately after the pens were down, the confrontations began. Victor turned to Lila, his voice low and cutting. "You have destroyed everything we built for a woman, and a lie." Lila stood her ground. "It was never a lie, father. It was the best part of me, and I will not erase it anymore." The exchange was raw, with accusations of selfishness and family betrayal. Marcus arrived late, his face a mask of betrayal. "You used me to get here, and now you throw it away." Lila met his gaze with honesty. "I never meant to hurt you, Marcus, but I could not keep pretending." The room filled with raised voices and legal threats, but through it all Lila reached for my hand under the table, a silent show of unity. In a private corner after the others left, we faced each other. The emotional breakdown came as Lila admitted the full extent of her internal torment, the nights she questioned her choices, the guilt that consumed her. I shared my own, the anger that had turned to understanding, the realization that both of us had paid dearly for the decisions forced by prejudice and duty. The conversation was a confrontation and a reconciliation, the words healing some wounds while opening others. We talked about the future, the company, the public fallout, and the possibility of rebuilding something new. The social consequences started immediately, reporters outside the building and messages from friends and strangers alike. Some praised the courage, others condemned the disruption. The psychological toll was real for both of us, but in that moment we saw the strength in our shared experience. The price had been high, but the truth had set a new path in motion. In the weeks that followed the signing, the empire adjusted to the new reality. Lila lost some board support and faced boycotts from conservative partners, but the company's stock stabilized as the innovation from Nexus continued to drive growth. I stepped into my role with caution, attending meetings and contributing ideas that felt like coming home. Victor eventually softened enough to have a tense lunch with Lila where he admitted his own role in the pressure that shaped her choices. Elaine reached out to me privately, expressing regret for the pain caused by their rigid views. The family was fractured but healing in small ways. Lila and I navigated the public eye together, the scandal bringing attention to issues of acceptance in corporate America. We faced the prejudice head-on with interviews where we spoke of love and ambition without apology. The personal cost was evident in the lost relationships and the constant scrutiny, but it also brought clarity. Lila moved out of the family home and into a simpler place where we could talk without the weight of legacy. Our connection deepened not as it was before but with a new maturity forged in fire. The romantic moments returned slowly, walks in the park, dinners where we laughed again, and the understanding that happiness came at a price we were both willing to pay. Through it all, the internal conflicts resolved into acceptance. I saw the decisions Lila made not as pure betrayal, but as the desperate acts of a woman trapped by expectations. She recognized my strength in surviving and thriving despite the pain. The awakening was mutual, the realization that truth and love demanded sacrifice but offered redemption. The company flourished under our combined leadership, a testament to what we built together. When family loyalty and societal expectations forced such devastating choices between love and duty, was Lila's revelation an act of true redemption, or just another decision that left scars on everyone involved? What choice would you make if you had to pay the ultimate price for the truth?